Welcome. Welcome back to my channel Conquer the Fear. In this video, we are going to discuss about what is singleton and how you can break the singleton in Java. Now, this is one of the common interview questions, very basic interview questions, very important question because many of them feel here to answer this particular question. They know about what exactly singleton is about, but they are not aware of like what are the different ways or what are the different mitigation plans which we can use to stop from breaking it. Okay. So in this video, I am going to show you what exactly is the current way that you can break this particular singleton. Then we look into what are the mitigations. I will show you the whole codes and everything line by line. What exactly are the code written to mitigating. So please watch this video in the end. Singleton is going to, you must be already aware like what exactly the singleton is about. Singleton is going to have only one single instance throughout your application. Okay? So in Java, when you're trying to create a singleton class, right? So this is one of the design patterns that you follow to create one instance. Okay? And this particular design pattern is going to ensure that the class has only one and only one instance throughout your application, and then it is also going to provide you a global point of access for your application. Now, what happens is that it seems that it is a very straightforward way to write a singleton, and there is no other workaround. But if you see, there are well implemented ways to create a singleton, and there can be a multiple instance created. Also, there can be an unexpected behavior. Now, why I'm discussing about this particular thing in the video is that because first of all, it is one of the important questions in interview, and many people are not aware of this. There is a breakdown which is happening for a singleton. So, in order to gain more knowledge about singleton, the basics of Java is quite important. Now, as I mentioned, like I am going to discuss the top five ways to break that particular thing in Java. Now, let's go back to find all these five methods. Now, the very first thing what we are going to discuss about is reflection. Okay. Now, how reflection is going to break the signal. Now, Java Reflection API, what happens? It does that it is designed to inspect and modify the internal behavior of a class or the method and the fields at the runtime. Now, what happens? It is going to give you a private constructor. It's going to make it a private accessible. Therefore, bypassing this particular single private constructor is going to and creating a new instance. Now, let's open the example over here. Now we mentioned about the singleton, right? Now you see here, this is a way of creating a singleton. Now if you see here, now this is a private constructor which is going to prevent the direct creation. So if you see here, this is checking the null creation over here, null is not or there. There is a check to prevent reflection based instantiation, right? So you will throw some instance exception over here. Okay. Now if you go a little bit down, there is a get instance method which is going to check for that particular instance creation and it will show the message. Okay. So this is how it's designed. Okay. Now let's look at how it is going to make that particular reflection pattern. Okay. Now if you see here, they get all constructed over here. Now what happens over here? Okay. Now if you see here, there is a constructor which is going to all the constructor which are there is going to get it from the reflection. Okay, and then you will get the constructed details over here. Now before that, if you see there is an already an instance which I have created. There are instance one and instance two over here. But if you see here from the constructor, I'm trying to make this private. Okay, private constructor acceptable now. Now if you have just made a notice over here, I have made it as a private, okay, which I mentioned here. Okay. Now if it is private, how should be accessible? So reflection is a way where we are trying to make it accessible, and when you're trying to set it as an accessible, it is going to be a public thing, and then we can create that instance over here. Now you remember here, I have actually added a instance to a null over here, and then only I am creating over here. Now, what happens after this it is done? I'm going to break that only one construction only over here. Then what happens? I am going to check the instances over here. Now, if you are have been working in the industry, you have been working for Java for a long time, right? You must be knowing what exactly the hash code does, right? So two instances are having the same hash code. That means it is the same object, right? But but it's not the only criteria. There is also a criteria which we have to keep the equality as well. But ideally, the two hash codes are having the same hash code. Object having the hash code. That ideally considered to be the same object. Okay? Now here actually, if I see, I'm going to run it and show you that this is going to be same instance. I mean, different instance. Not the. So what exactly is here is that I'm going to, and actually I have broken the singleton concept over here. Now, if you see here, hash code over here, it is broken. Now these are two different hash codes over here. That means these are two different instances. Okay? So this is how you break that. Now let's look at the mitigation. So one common way to prevent the reflection is to modify the singleton construct. And what you can do is that you can throw that particular singleton, right now exception over there. So if an already instance is existing, it's going to throw an exception over there. Now this is one of the robust solution. It's going to make use of the enum for singleton implementation, and enum is going to be inherently resistant to having the reflection rate. Okay. Now we'll look into the exempt singleton reflection class. Okay. Now if you see here, what I've done is that singleton reflection class, I have a static method instance over here. Now inside this, if you see this particular, this is still private over here. Okay. Now if you see under this, I'm going to check if there is an instance is going to be already null or not. If it is not null, then I'm going to throw an here in the illegal state of exception. So it means that the instance is already created. There is no need to create it again. Okay. Next other things are actually same over here for the implementation. Okay. Now let's try to see run and see demonstrate the program and see how we can stop it. Okay. How it is going to stop. Now inside this particular class, the reflection broker mitigation class. Now you see, I have similar instances here. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm trying to make it the consistent accessible over here. I'm trying to create the instance over here. Everything over here if you see, and then you will see and you can run this. Now if you see here, this has got the exception over here. Okay. Now what happened over here? We are trying to throw an exception over here, because at the moment it tries to create an instance over here, I'm trying to, what I've done here, I'm throwing an exception over here. Okay, that's what it is going to catch that exception, and then it is going to print it. So that's what, if you see here, it is protected. So if you see, it is protected from creating the instance. Okay, I hope I was able to explain you this example in a clear way. Okay, and you are having an understanding of the very first method of how to make that particular using the reflection, and also how to mitigate the reflection. Okay, now let's look at the second example. Let me close all these particular classes. Now let's go to the serialization process. Now, before going to that, what exactly is serialization is something where you are trying to convert the object into a function. Right? So when you are doing a serializable singleton object is serialized, then it can also be deserialized. So there is a method called read object method. It is used for along with the object input stream. It is used for creating a new instance. So even if the constructor is private, going to need a multiple instances. Okay. So this is where how we can break that barrier. So that's this is where the serialization is going to break. Okay. Now look at the serializable singleton example over here. Now if you see here, this is going to be the sample class over here. Now if you see here, this is the serialization ID over here, the constructor over here, the private thing what we have discussed over here. And then if you see there is a get instance and also there is a message over here. Okay. Now if you see here, I'm going to show you a way where it is going to break it. Well, now similar to this, I have written a breaker class for that. Same to this particular thing, I'm going to call this particular thing. Okay. Now, if you see here, I am trying to create an serialization version over here. I'm trying to convert it to an object and then it will to write over here. Okay. Now there is a process of deserialization over here where I am serializing. Then trying to take the particular value from the serialized object and then I'm trying to construct an object over here and that is an instance true of. Okay. So the very first thing actually I created an instance over here and then the second instance I'm trying to create it from the serialization object which I have earlier created. Now make a note I'm drawing an exception now trying to in this practice over here and remember like I told you like if the two hash code objects then it's going to be a different object. Let's run this and see whether it is breaking the exception. Yeah. Now if you see the constructor is called over here, and if you see it is actually you see this is going so singleton is singleton is broken over here. You see this is the two different instances. Okay. Now you see here these two instances are different. So that's what it is going to be a different and then this is how we have break the particular serialization process over here. Now uh, Now let's discuss about the mitigation plan. Okay. Now in order to prevent this particular deserialization uh, by creating a new instance, what you can do, you have to there is one of the method that is read result which you have to implement in the singleton case. Now this method is called by serialization mechanism after the object has been read from the string. So it is going to allow you to return the existing instance instead of trying to really create the instance of it. Now let's look at that particular fixed version of it. Okay. Now if you go and see this inside this, yeah, everything is same. I'm trying to create an instance, so I'm trying to create an agent instance over here and all thing. But if you see here in this video, it's still private and other thing, but get an instance if it is returning this. Now this is the method which I was talking about, that is read. Okay. So if you see here, this is an if you make a note, this is part of this overriding this. Now if you just go inside and see, right? So this is going to be an read result method which is called up during the deserialization. Okay. So now if you make a note, this is returning an instance over here. Now let's go and see how stopping the particular the the application class what we have written the first version, how it is going to demonstrate over. Now the same instance I created over here. Okay. I'm trying to create the same, first serializing it, then I'm trying to deserializing it over here. Everything is same over here. But let's see what is happening after this. When we run this. Now you see there is no exception being thrown over there. You see it is serialization is there, it is mitigated, and everything is the same thing. Now if you make a note over here, these two instances are exactly same because they have the same. Okay, so after this of implementation of this root result, this is going to be solved out. Okay, I hope you got the second option of how we can actually stop creating instances using the serialization. Let me close all this particular classes. Let's look at the third option of that is cloning. Okay. Now we're going to show you the third way of cloning. Now what exactly, how it is going to create a singleton. Now if a singleton class which is going to implement a clonable interface, okay, you see it's an clonable interface, it is going to override the clone method. So this is where it is going to override the previous method from the object class, so it can be cloned for creating the new instance. Now if you see here, I'm going to implement clonable interface over there. Now if you see here, this is something which is important here because clonable interface you have the clone method overriding over. Now you see here that is going to return this super class clone. So the default behavior that is going to create a new instance. Okay? This how so everything is like getting instance and everything is like it is looking for the instance is null or not, it is going to create. So these are all the behavior of the single thing which we are going to create it. However, now let's see how it is going to create that particular. Okay. Now if you see under this particular thing when you're trying to create an instance over here, second instance I'm trying to create. Now I'm trying to call this clone instance over. Okay. The method for the first instance and then I'm creating an instance over here. Now let's run and see how we can how it is different. Now you see this is totally different hash code. Hence it denotes that it is creating a new instance in spite of that. Right? So instead of using a clonable things. Now, let's get the mitigation way, how we can prevent. So what you can do, you can inside the previous override method, what you can do, you can throw a clone not supported exception. Okay. Now let's look at the first version of this. Now, you see there is a user initialization, there is a constructor written over here, still private, and then you see it is returning the instance. But if you see in the clone method, I am trying to throw a clone not supported exception over it. I am trying to show a message over it. Just everything is same. Okay, let's look at the mitigation plan class. So everything I'm trying to do, everything over here, I'm trying to clone it for the second instance, and then let me run this. Now you see here, it is preventing that it is so I'm trying to protect that from creating the instance. Right? So the moment it is got created for the first time, it is stopping it creating the another instance. Okay, and that's how we prevented it using the clonable way. Okay, that comes to an end of the third way of mitigating the serialization singleton. Now let's look at the fourth way and we'll discuss that. Fourth way is having a multiple class loader. Okay. Now class loader is one of the important concepts. So each class is going to maintain its own namespace. Okay? So if a same singleton class is loaded by two different classes, each class loader will definitely effectively have its own class version of the singleton class, and thus it will create new instance. This will result in the multiple instances of which was intended to be a single class. Okay? So that's where it is going to break that thing. Okay? Now let's look at the example of singleton class over here. So we'll first look into the singleton class over here, class header. What happens here? It is going to class loader over here. Then the instance is there. And there is an instance and then over there, right? Now let's look at the breaking way to solve this, right? Now, if you look at this particular thing, right, I have a URL, current instance of this URL. I'm trying to get it from the file name, and then I'm going to get the URL. So I'm trying to make it the path is, the path is adjusted according to the need. Then I'm trying to create a two separate URL class loader over there. So I'm trying to create from that particular URL itself. I'm trying to create this two. So this is going to be the parent one is going to be null and it is going to be isolated. Okay. Now when you're trying to load this particular singleton class using the class loader one, and I have a logic written for the class loader. Now you see here this I'm trying to load the singleton class. and I'm trying to get that particular method of that instances, and then I'm trying to invoke using the null. Okay, same way, I'm trying to check second, instance, and then I'm trying to create it over here, and then I'm trying to see what exactly the hash code would be about. Okay, now to see the messages from each instance, let's say I've just trying to message over here, and let's run this method over here. Now you see here, if there is a class with the exception being thrown over here. Now, the prevention of this release. Now, this particular thing, this is generally very difficult because in dynamic environment, it is very difficult to get this. Now, it is usually addressed using a singleton class which is loaded in a common in an application-wide class loader. Okay, so the class loader for your, or your application class loader is not isolated application class loader. That might be a specific module class. So in most standard application, isn't going to be a problem unless there is a custom class load explicitly involved. That's how custom things can be, or the class loader can be done over. Now let's look at the fifth option. That is the multi-threading way. Now singleton class is implemented in the lazy initialization without a proper synchronization process in a multi-threading environment. The multiple threads can constantly pass that particular, the if instance not equal to null check, and then it is going to create instance over here. So it is going to violate your singleton principle over here. Okay. Now let's look at the example over here. So we'll see the serialization singleton class over here broken. Now here, if you see, this is going to be, it's not a volatile class over here, variable over here. This is static lazy initialization. Now you see here, it's going to sleep for some time, and then now here if you see, this is not a thread safe method because it is static instance method over here, and then there is a thread can bypass this particular what we have discussed about here. So this is the lazy initialization process. So this is not, particularly first of all, it is not having the volatile key, and then it is going to be, a thread safe method. Now let's look at the uh, where we can take this particular thing. Now what happens here is that I've written a class over here. I'm taking an estimated number for estimating the exact file number of threads, and then what I've done, I'm writing in the loop. Okay. So let's say 10 threads. I'm trying to submit this particular easy initializing method over here, and I'm trying to invoke the hash code out. And then after I'm done, I'm trying to shut down and do the termination. So you are likely to see a multiple constructor being called up, and you will see this. Let's see. Now if you see here, these are all the instances which are created. Okay, in spite of this being a single thing class. Okay, but it is broken. Okay. Now, in order to mitigate this, there are most common ways used to have the lazy singleton thread, the thread safe one. So what will happen? We have a synchronization get method, but that can be performed. That can have a performance bottleneck over there. There is also double check lock, which is going to be along with the volatile. This is one of the most optimized approach where we can require the careful implementation of, and then we can have the bill things over here. Now we'll first look at that particular, the lazy singleton, fixed version. What we'll do now, you see here in this section, three, volatile keyword is added over here. And then if you see the constructor is going to have an additional thing when there is a exception. The null is created or not, then it's going to throw a exception over here. Okay, that is one way of handling it. And the second is that actually I'm trying to add two number of checks. This is called the double check. Okay, so the first is going to avoid your synchronization overhead problem, and then third is actually like we have written a synchronized lock over here on the class evidence, then it is going to acquire a lock on the particular class, and then it is going to check second time going to check it if the another instance is already not by the other threads. Okay, that's why it is going after picking everything, it is going to check on that. For the lazy thing when you're trying to check. Now let's look at the Bill Pugh Singleton way, where you are going to, it is one of the best practices for creating a easy initialization. Now, if you see here in this particular private instance, I'm trying to, call this over here, and then there is an inner helper class which I created the singleton helper class. So this is going to create an instance of this, okay? And then it is going to return this particular instance of this inner helper class. This is how one of the best way to create with the help of the helper class. Now comes Enum Singleton. Now Enum is going to be one of the robust, or I would say the most robust approach for creating a singleton class, because it is implicitly private and it is going to be called only once JVM. So that is the reason and enums are preferred way. If you see here the enum instance is created, it is private and it is called only once. Okay, so this is one of the best way to create. Okay, now we'll demonstrate how this particular this version of this particular thing is created. So I'm trying to show you a class where I those particular things. Now you see the lazy initialization double check process. I already running the 5 threads over here. I'm trying to run this particular program, get the name of this particular instance, and then similar things I've done. Now here if you see, this is for the lazy initialization process. Now this is for the build bug which we already see here for the approach build bug singleton. So this is going to be again running this particular thing, and then at the end we have seen the enum things also. So now here you will see we'll run the particular all these three things and then try to create them run them. Now if you see here all of them are creating the same instance over here. You make a note of this. See here in this also it is creating the same instance. So you must have seen where there are loops running over here also. But in spite of that, creating this creating instance, it is not creating the names. Okay. So this is the fifth way of preventing your singleton to be breaked up. I hope I was able to explain you all the 5 ways, possible ways to break that singleton and how to mitigate that, right? So now you already know what are the weaknesses, what are the appropriate mitigation plans, strategies you can apply, and most importantly, you are ahead of people who are not aware of this particular concept or breaking of singleton. Uh, Please share it with the needy people. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching.